I'd like to start by saying that I went to St. Cloud Tech, and while I was going to Tech, I had heard that there was an opening for washing windows at a jewelry store downtown. And one of my friends said, well, why don't you go and apply? Which I did, and 3 weeks later, they called me and said, yes, we've checked you out and you can start washing windows. So that's where I started with the jewelry store business. And then shortly after this, after I graduated, I went into service, I think in July, and I was gone overseas within 3 months. I spent 2 years in the South Pacific, and then coming back, I went right back into Strobel's Jewelry, and that's where I started to learn the business. I took a Wisconsin vocational course in how to repair watches. And Mr. Strobel, starting this, Mr. Strobel handed me a clock one day and said, well, I want you to take this apart and put it back together. I said, well, you've got to be kidding. But he wasn't. So I did. I took it apart and I put it back together, and I got it all back together and running, but I still had one little washer left over. But it ran without that, and I found out later that it was a washer that probably should be in there, but not real necessary to make the clock run. But that's how I started the jewelry business. And then from there, eventually, I started repairing all the watches, or a great deal of the watches at Strobel's, and then I also got involved in waiting on people and selling merchandise, learning the diamond, at that time we weren't real experienced in diamond sales as we are today. But we sold diamonds, and we sold a lot of silver, sterling silver and so on. So I sold, and glassware, Fostoria glassware, all these different things that happened while we were there. And then I think Pat, one day, Pat's uncle, by the way, was a partner in this business also. And he hired Pat to come in after school and work at Strobel's. And I knew who she was, but I was really kind of afraid of her because I didn't know her that well, and she was really some gal. But and that's how we met. And in fact, one of the first nights that we went out, I asked my dad if I could use his car, and he said, yes, you can use it tonight. And we went to a little place on the east side. I don't remember where it was, but we went in for coffee and donut or whatever it was. And backing up, I backed into a telephone pole and broke the bumper and on my dad's car. And I thought, oh my God, this is the first time. What is Pat going to think? What's my dad and mother going to think? So I came home and I told my dad about it, and he said, well, I don't think we'll tell your mother about this because she would really be upset. So he said, tomorrow morning I'll take you to school, and then you take the car over and you have them repair the bumper, and then I'll bring it back at night. And so that's what we did, and my mother never found out to this day that we ever broke that. So, but anyway, that was some of our experiences, and then eventually, of course, Pat and I got married, and we were so excited. We wanted to have children right away, and it didn't materialize that way for about 4 years. And then we started having children. We had 7, and still working at Strobel's all this time. But the business there was kind of, we weren't progressing every year like we should. And so one day we heard that Crossroads was thinking about building, and the leasing manager came into Strobel's and said, well, would you like to start a store over there? And we thought about it, and they said the rent was $4,000 a year. Oh my goodness, we couldn't possibly do that. So we said no. And Don Strobel said, no, we wouldn't do that. And then about, maybe it was a year later, 6 months later, something like that.
3 months later.
3 months later, the newspaper came out and it had all of the drawings of where it was going to go and what it was going to be, and Penny's were going to be here, and Sears were going to be here. And then Pat and I said, we can't stay where we are because we were going downhill. And I said, that would really be an opportunity for us to start a jewelry store. And Pat said, well, let's call that guy right away. We'll have him come over. We'll wine and dine them, and we'll serve them a meal and everything else. So we did. And he accepted, and he came, and I said, has that place been leased yet? And he said, well, we are thinking of signing a lease on Monday morning with another jeweler from downtown. And but he said, well, why are you interested? And I said, because I want to start a store out there. And I said, we would not, our sales would all be there. That we wouldn't, have two stores, or we could distribute these sales back and forth, because everything was based on a percentage. Rent was based on percentage. So it really, it turned out that we wined and dined him, and he said, well, I'll let you know. He said, if I call you, or when I call you, if I call you, would you be able to go to the bank that morning with $4,000 as a down payment on this? And I said, yes, of course. And of course, Pat's father said, whatever you need, call me, and I'll help finance you. And that's really how we were able to do this. And so I didn't tell my partner in Strobel's or anything. I just waited, and I didn't hear anything. I didn't hear anything. And all of a sudden, about 3 weeks later, I think it was one evening, I got a phone call, and it said, can you be at the bank tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock? I'll be there. So this is what happened. That's how we got our own store. We went there and we made the deposit. Then I came back and I told my partner that I was going out to Crossroads, and he kind of indicated that, well, he'd like to go then too. And I said, no, that was his store. His name was Don Strobel, and he should have that, and we'd like to start our own. And so I believe it was in December 31st was my last day at Strobel's in 1965 and 1966. We opened our store on March 9th. And from that day on, things really were great. I mean, Pat had some serious health problems at that time. But when we had 7 children, and I didn't have a job, I was depending on everything for this. And gosh, after the first month, I made more money than I made at Strobel's at any time. And I just knew it was going to be good. I said, I'll start and do all the watch repair work, and the watch repair work will pay for the rent. And then anything we sell would be extra. And after about 6 months, I had so much watch work, I had to start farming out. I couldn't take care of it anymore. So it's just been an exciting 30 years ago, I think, that Dick started working at the store. He came out of college, and in fact, I think while he was going to college, he may have worked part-time. He started working there, and we were such great partners. I mean, I have to say, I don't think we've ever had any misunderstandings about this, and that's 43 years ago. And I couldn't have found a better son or partner in the whole world. And I guess that's where I am. Selling I think it's in my blood. I love the challenge. If someone comes in, I want to help them, and usually it's a very happy time. I mean, they're celebrating a birthday or an anniversary or something, or getting engaged. And it just, I know that we can do better than anybody else, and I won't let anybody, if possible, outdo me. So that's kind of that's always been my thought. I love doing it. Yesterday would be an example. I had a couple come in yesterday afternoon, and I was just went out on the floor, and there were people all over, so I went over and waited on them and sold them a diamond. And I can't tell you how gratifying that was. An engagement ring that, because I haven't done that for a while. It was fun. It just that, and I know Dick has that same feeling. He is the greatest salesman in the whole world, bar none, believe me. I love the employees, and without them, we wouldn't be successful, and I know that. And they, every one of them has their own niche, and there aren't any two that are really the same kind of salesperson. So, which is so neat because you have to work on this one for this, you got to talk to somebody about this for this, and so on and so forth. But that's what makes it a family. And if there's any problems with anybody, they come and they talk to you about it, or if they need time off for this or that or school or whatever, we've always tried to accommodate and still do today. That's the way it works. So. Well, I think what you receive from the community, you must also give part of it back. And that's always been my feeling. I think we should support, all of the different charities, the arts, and we do. And I've done that ever since I started. I'm going to regress back just a moment. When we first moved out there was some animosity about, gee, he's moving out there and he's leaving the downtown area, and the merchants weren't very happy with that. And so it was kind of my goal to see that we moved out there because that's where the business was going to be, and I didn't want them to feel that way. And so I joined the chamber, and I became president of the St. Cloud Chamber for a year in, I think, 1969 and 70. And eventually, I think most of this has disappeared. I don't think there's hardly any of that around today. We do business with as many people downtown as we do, and we give business downtown. This is just the way that we have this thing designed. I think there's room for everyone. That I thought was Family Day. And right from the very beginning, I thought this is a time when there's time off that people, if they want to go to church or whatever they want to do with their family, that has to be. And no matter what. And from day one, that was written in our lease. And each time, for at least the first few leases that came up, that was always a question. And I can recall the one time when the fellow said, you'll have to be open on Sunday. And we said no, and we went right down to almost the last day of the lease. And I got a call from him, and he said, okay, it's written in, get back to work. And from that day on, I don't think there's ever been a question about open on Sunday. And even though now we're moving into a new store, I know that will always be held. It will not be open on Sundays. There's one thing I do remember. The day that we were about to open, I handled keepsake diamond rings and wedding rings. And in the window, we had just a little display, and we probably had, 5, 6 wedding rings in there or something. But anyway, a gal went by and rapped on the window. We weren't open yet. And so I went to the door, and she said, are those for sale? And I said, yes. So she came in, and she bought a ring for herself, a wedding ring, and one for her husband-to-be. And I would say maybe 2 years ago, she came in the store and said, do you remember me? I'm the one that bought that first wedding ring from you. And I thought that was just unbelievable, that something like this could still go on. And it's really a big thing to. Yeah, and with the opening day out there, people were really, I guess, quite happy that we were moving. We got bouquets and flowers, and we had them setting all over the store. And a couple of people came in and thought we were a floral shop, which didn't say much for our diamonds, but I don't think we sold any of them, so I know we didn't. It was really an experience. It was fun to start the new store, to do exactly. I had a friend of ours, Betty Hoffman, who is a decorator, help pick out the different things. The chandelier, which is in your house now, but we went down to Dayton's and we looked all over. And at that time, Dayton's had a display of several of them, and this one was on sale, and we picked it out, and that hung in our store for many, many years. It was the center of the store. And so it was just exciting there's so many things that Betty Hoffman decided that we ought to have a silk background. That was the wallpaper, and so we had a silk background, and it was very nice looking. It was, it brought the image of being a first-class operation, and I loved it. So, oh, very much. There's, she said, I'll take this back to one thing. I used to smoke Tiparillos. And Pat remembers this. And so, in the morning, I would go down and I'd vacuum and I'd be smoking that Tiparillo. And then, of course, I'd put it out and so on. And Pat came in and said, "What is that smell?" And I said, "Well, I don't know, maybe it's a Tiparillo." And that day I quit smoking and I have not touched a cigarette since. And that's 41 years ago. So this is that is amazing. But Pat is involved in a lot of decisions and stuff that we would talk it over. We would say, we had an opportunity at one time to invest in some things, and we decided not to, and it was an excellent move. And I just think that when I go home at night and I have my family and I have Pat there, that's my world.
Thank you. You got the cameraman. Yeah.
I went to St. Cloud Tech High School, and I was in need of some clothes and so on, and my parents and so on, we didn't have a lot of money, so I wanted to find a job, a part-time job. And my friend, who I knew very well, was washing windows at a women's store downtown, but it was right next door to the jewelry store. And he said, "You know what? They're looking for somebody to wash windows." So I immediately applied, and I waited and I waited and I waited, and I thought, my goodness, why would it take 3 weeks to decide if you want me or not? But after 3 weeks, I got a phone call, and they said, we'd like to have you come down and wash windows. And then I washed windows, and I also swept the floor every morning and did that kind of work that had to be done. And that's basically what happened. And then I was drafted and went into service. And when I came back, I was welcomed back there right away, and it just worked out beautifully.
Well, I went to Cathedral High School, and when I was a senior, I got a job at Strobel's Jewelry, and I worked after school every day, and then I worked there a couple of years. I worked there when I was out at St. Ben's too, and they were very good about kind of accommodating me for my hours. But
And did you sell things there?
oh yes, I sold. I was not the prize clerk, as I found out. I came to work one day, and here was this good-looking guy that had just come back from the service. Well, this good-looking guy brought me home from the store party a week later, and since then I've not let loose from this good-looking guy. That was it. Yeah. Well, I think from the time Don came home and mentioned that they had come to the store and wanted to see if we were interested, I had a feeling that he really wanted to do it. And then one night in the papers there was an announcement about Crossroads, and Don read it to me, and I said, "Don, you really want to go out there, don't you?" And we made up our decision within 5 minutes, I think. And so that's when he said, "Well, he's coming next weekend, and then I'll talk to him." And he'd been around for a while, this gentleman that was signing people. And I said, "Don, why don't we just call him tonight?" And so he called him, and he left his number. And of course, he had him call me at home. And I said to him, is the store leased yet? And he said, well, no, not. You could hear the hesitation in his voice. And so that's when I relayed the message to Don, and that's when he contacted us, and we tried to see if he was interested in us too. These were keepsakes. Keepsake diamonds were delivered without a return address on them, or they had some fictitious train. And at the time, we were just buying, all of our jewelry was sent to the house that he was stocking. And one day I came home, and here over the mailbox was sitting this box about this large, and it was a diamond delivery. So,
Just sitting outside?
yeah, sitting outside. Yeah. I think Don has always put people first, and I think that is the most important thing of all, his obligation to the community, but definitely that the people that he works with and the people that he deals with, that is the most important thing of all. Grateful that it has enabled us to be able to educate our children and be comfortable and have a wonderful life. But when I think about the store, I just think about the joy when I walk into that store. Everyone is so happy and joyful, and it's just such a pleasant place to walk into. I think I was mostly the ears. And he would come home and he would tell me whatever it was that was bothering him or whatever he was thinking. And I think more than anything, weren't my suggestion as much as trying to feel out what he felt and then encourage him in whatever his decision was. Yes, I would like to tell you about my mother and father. My father was so proud of Don, and they would go out shopping in Crossroads, and they would sit on a bench right in front of the store and just look at the store. They were so proud of him.
Oh, that is great.
Yeah.
Store. And we now have Erin with us, and she is capable of running a store, believe me. She is one of the best salespersons I've ever seen. She's been there like 2 months or 3 months, and she's selling things that are unbelievable. And I know that she has a great future there, and I'm so proud of that, I can't tell you. That's where it is. That's all I wanted to say.